In a dark and secluded village, where time seemed to stand still, there was an old wooden house. It was inhabited by a lonely old man named Albert. He was a mysterious figure to all the villagers. Gray hair and deep wrinkles on his face testified that he had lived alone for many years. Albert was a fan of ancient mystical rituals and was always interested in the world of the dead. His relentless pursuit of immortality led him to books about ancient rituals and witchcraft. He collected everything necessary for his plan, rare ingredients, blood of sacrifices and scrolls with mysterious symbols. One day, in the dead of night, Albert decided to test his strength and try to achieve immortality. He went to the local cemetery, where he was going to perform his most dangerous and daring ritual. Illuminated only by the light of the full moon, he began to summon the spirits of the dead, hoping that they would give him eternal life. Albert continued his ritual, chanting mysterious spells and sacrificing blood, until suddenly the wind began to swirl around him. There was a thud in the darkness, and figures with torn clothes and empty eye sockets rose from the coffins. These were the spirits he had summoned from the world of the dead. Since that night, the villagers have noticed that something has changed. Albert's old wooden house began to emit an unhealthy light, and strange sounds and groans were heard from its windows. People began to see ghosts wandering the streets, anxiously whispering to each other about their encounters with darkness. Albert felt neither fear nor terror. He was overcome with a sense of power and untold excitement, seeing how his ritual had borne fruit. He communicated with the spirits, received from them knowledge about the mysteries of the past and the future. The more souls he summoned, the stronger his control over them became. However, the further Albert progressed in his experiments, the more he lost his humanity. His skin became pale and transparent, and his eyes acquired a reddish hue. He forgot about eating and sleeping because his mind was completely occupied with the knowledge of forbidden secrets and the power he had gained. With the spirits came the curse on the village. Now every night has become a terrible ordeal for the residents. They heard moans and screams from Albert's house, saw black smoke coming out of his windows, surrounding everything. Children no longer played in the streets, and adults hid in their homes, hoping that the darkness would pass them by. But one young guy, named Alexei, decided not to give up. He was the son of one of the residents and could not just watch the village sink into darkness. Alexei began to investigate the source of evil and realized that the answer was in Albert's house. One night, Alexei decided to enter Albert's house to expose his secrets and try to stop the curse. He was determined, but he didn't know what was waiting for him inside. Entering the house, he found himself in a maze of mirrors, where the reflections of his own fear and dark thoughts came to life, trying to absorb his soul. Alexei, immersed in a maze of mirrors, felt his mind begin to disintegrate under the influence of reflections. They appealed to his deepest fears and doubts, trying to break his will. But Alexei was persistent and determined. With each step through the maze of mirrors, he felt his strength leaving him, and his fear became more piercing. He saw the reflections of his face distorted and distorting reality, and heard the whisper of temptation in his ear. But he didn't give up. At the end of the maze, Alexei found a mirrored room where Albert was. The old man was devoid of human form, his skin was covered with cracks, and his eyes were empty and devoid of life. But his strength and power were still palpable. Alexei performed in front of Albert, with burning eyes and a heart full of determination. He began to talk to the dark spirits summoned by Albert, hoping that they could hear him and return to their seats. He explained to them that their existence causes pain and suffering to the peaceful villagers. Gradually, the spirits began to listen to Alexei's words. They realized that they had been used and controlled by Albert, and their anger gradually turned into regret and awareness of their own loss. They decided to leave the world of the living and return to the world of the dead in order to end the curse imposed on the village forever. As the spirits disappeared, the curse began to gradually subside. Albert's house lost its sinister power, and the darkness that enveloped the village began to dissipate. Residents felt relieved and hopeful as they restored their daily lives. Albert, left alone and deprived of his strength, realized the scale of his mistake and pity for those whom he had caused suffering. He realized that his thirst for power and immortality had led to destruction, and his heart was filled with remorse. Albert realized that his self-destruction was inevitable, and he decided to use the last remnants of his strength to correct his mistakes. He explained to Alexei that the power he was pursuing should not be used for evil, and that true happiness and wisdom are in the soul of every person. Alexei was imbued with Albert's words and realized that the true victory lies not in controlling others, but in self-knowledge and acceptance of their dark sides. He agreed to help Albert find redemption and restore balance in the village. They went to the ancient temple located on the top of the mountain, where the wise elder, known as the Great Guardian, lived. He was the last keeper of ancient knowledge and could lift the curse imposed on Albert and the village. The Great Guardian performed a healing and enlightenment ritual for Albert. He plunged it into the depths of his consciousness so that Albert could overcome his dark distortions and find the light inside himself. It was a difficult and painful process, but Albert went through it with faith and determination. Gradually Albert realized his mistakes and accepted his fate. He acknowledged his selfishness and thirst for power, which led to the suffering of the village. He realized that true wisdom and strength come from love, compassion and sacrifice. At the end of the trip, Albert and Alexei returned to the village, where the residents were waiting for them. They saw Albert's transformation. His face began to glow with inner light, and his eyes were filled with wisdom and sincerity. The villagers felt true healing and hope for the future. Alexei became the new leader of the village, continuing to learn from the Great Guardian and sharing his knowledge and experience with others. The village flourished and became a place where people lived in harmony with nature and with each other. Albert, although he became wiser and spiritually enlightened, decided to stay in the shadows so as not to remind the residents of his past sins. He served the village and helped those who needed his wisdom and advice, but remained hidden from the eyes of outsiders. If you dare to delve into the darkest corners of horror and macabre, I beg you to subscribe to the Mr. Scary Stories channel. Their content will send you on a